Have you ever wanted to revisit the Robocop vs. Terminator game from the 90s without having to purchase a Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis and all the necessary accessories? We've got you covered in today's video. Did you know that the video game storyline was based on a 4-issue Frank Miller comic book series? Today we'll be walking you through that entire story as well. And finally, did you know that there was mass differences between the Super Nintendo version of the game and the Sega Genesis version of the game? From the gore, to the storyline, to the intro, to the ending. Today we're going back to an awesome time in the 90s where tiny plastic cartridges and comic books could bring to life our wildest R-rated movie face-offs and include us in the action in the process. We're going to talk about how the early 90s managed to take two of the biggest, coolest sci-fi action characters in history and do the obvious, make them fight each other.
Let them fight.
We're going to rediscover the game that had us pumping our fists in joy or throwing our emotes in anger, at least as far as the tethered cords would take them. So come with me if you want to live, because dead or alive, you're coming with me. This is Robocop vs. Terminator, the game and the Frank Miller comic book series that melted every 90s kid's brain. We'll discover where the idea came from, how they brought it to life, and how fun it was to play. In the 90s, despite not even having a Freddy vs. Jason or an Alien vs. Predator yet, it felt like anything was possible when it came to all the possibilities of IP collaborations. One of the first things I ever did on a computer as a kid was type in MS-DOS the X-Men characters that I wanted to see fight each other. Blame comic books, animated TV series, blame Bloodsport, but our insatiable desire for unending violence against evil forces was unmatched in the 90s. So Robocop vs. Terminator just sounded like a logical step at the time for kids who had no idea what copyright infringement even meant. Believe me when I tell you that it was already on our minds, but in the real world, the possibility of Robocop vs. Terminator actually began with Robocop 2 and the legendary Frank Miller. After the success of 1987's Robocop, Orion Pictures hired the writer to craft an even bigger sequel in Robocop 2 after the visionary had changed the comic landscape forever with his work on The Dark Knight Returns. The choice was obvious, as he was clearly the type of creative person who could thrive in the world of pop culture violence and satire. Orion eventually realized that Miller's writing was a little more hardcore than even they bargained for, and eventually shaved off much of his script and original vision. Miller walked away from the experience in Hollywood for a time, being annoyed and unsatiated when it came to the tale he wanted to tell with Robocop. This frustration, though, would turn into his Robocop vs. Terminator comic book that would even incorporate some of the unused ideas he had from his original Robocop script. This movie obviously didn't feature the Terminator, but fuck it, if we're doing comics, anything goes. Miller employed the talents of X-Men and Thor artist Walt Simonson to pair up with on the project, and Simonson's mythical approach to art perfectly fit Miller's dark and gritty storytelling. The 4-episode comic series would debut in May of 1992, published by Dark Horse Comics. The first issue would follow a bleak future in which the Terminators and Skynet were on the verge of completing their task and exterminating humanity before a resistant soldier named Flo learns the awful truth about where Skynet truly began, with Robocop. She learns that Robocop's mere existence led to Skynet using his one-of-a-kind merging of humanity with machine to turn their own army conscious and sentient, leading to Skynet's physical war on mankind. It's where it all began. Unaware that Alex Murphy was actually a good man and had no idea any of this was going to happen, she travels back in time naked and unafraid to kill him and stop Skynet once and for all. Of course, Skynet realizes this as well and sends their own team of Terminators back in time to stop her, and we're off to Schittsburg. Meanwhile, on Robocop's side of things, he's become depressed.
Wow. Can you do that, Dad?
He's mourning the life that he used to have and only living to carry out his call to duty to protect and uphold the law. But he's still sad. Flo shows up to kill Robocop and is almost successful. When he realizes she's telling the truth after noticing some loose-skinned Terminators running around Detroit, he almost immediately offers up his own life to stop the future war. It's kind of sad, actually, because he seems kind of pumped about the idea, just leaving it all behind in one final act of protection for humanity. Like I said, he was sad. As Robocop eradicates himself, the future heals immediately. Birds come back to life and everything begins to change. Skynet realizes this is happening and makes one last-ditch effort to send a Terminator boy and dog back in time, who successfully stop him and enslave his consciousness, once again unleashing war against humankind. After decades of his consciousness being entrapped, spent having to watch the eradication of humankind helplessly, Alex Murphy figures out a way from inside the computer to replicate the memory of his human self repetitively in the system until Skynet can't destroy it as fast as he recreates it. He basically turns himself into a computer virus and hacks into a Terminator command center and factory. There, he takes control of their machines and forces them to destroy themselves while using their materials to create a new physical version of himself, complete with using the Terminator's cloned flesh to give himself a new face. Robocop is back and decides to go full-on Kobe on the Skynet army. So along with the help of Future Flo, Robo creates an entire army. Skynet, realizing they are doomed, start to make him peace offerings. They would make him a god and even offer him up threesomes with his estranged wife in Flo, who he apparently has the secret robot hots for. Robocop, you scoundrel. He's a man of law and order though, and he tells them to shut up and die, literally, before eradicating them for good, along with this version of himself. Back home, old Robocop is back to upholding the law, and Skynet tries one more time to send a dog back in time, but it hilariously overshoots its shot and ends up stepped on by a dinosaur back in time. That would have looked cool on film, and though we'll likely never see it, we did get the Robocop vs. Terminator video game. By 1993, Virgin Interactive Entertainment and Interplay saw this as an opportunity kids would go crazy for and put it into turbo mode. They threw down $2 million for the licensing fees, and Robocop vs. Terminator was brought to life on Super Nintendo, Mega Drive Genesis, Game Gear, and eventually Game Boy. Though the versions would differ slightly, with the main differences being between the SNES and the Genesis. Lead designer John Bodie and Tim Williams based some of the game's designs and bullet dynamics on Contra 3, which you can easily see while enjoying the games. In both models, the story begins with a nicely packaged, if slightly different version of the story from the comics. Robocop's existence leads to the creation of Skynet, and now he must stop it. To do so, you take to the streets, and the side-scroller anarchy begins. On the Genesis side, Cyberdyne Systems are contracted to build the Skynet Defense Network and use Robocop's technology to build the Skynet CPU. At some point, the Terminators trick Robocop into uploading himself into the computer system and then trap him into the future where he must fight his way through them to save humanity. Over on the Super Nintendo side, the story is much deeper, more relatable to the comic books, and is even presented in a comic book panel style that makes it a little more glamorous. Hell, Flo even has that awful bowl cut Robocop was thinking dirty thoughts about in the comic book. But more on the differences later. On each console, you'll trudge through level after level with a handful of weapons upgrades along the way, including the arm cannon of an ED-209, blasting through street thugs, Terminators, Terminator dogs, hunter-killers, and eventually the holy shit central package of Skynet's mainframe brought to life as a floating Terminator head, which kind of reminds you of the 3D Universal ride from back in the day. The levels include the streets of Detroit, toxic waste facilities, a Delta City construction site, OCP research facilities, multiple Skynet locations, and even the OCP corporate offices in a hidden level on Genesis. You start off the game with one of three difficulties: Wimpy, Normal, or Killer. And believe me when I tell you, don't try Killer. You aren't that guy. Or actually, I'm just not that guy. I wasn't that guy, and I'm not that guy. The game is notoriously difficult, and it's sometimes frustrating. First off, the bad guys are coming at you from all angles, and I mean all angles. It might be a side-scroller, but you are required to stop attacks from every level and fire your cannon from a multitude of different angles to achieve glory. Otherwise, these annoying little flame bursts of ammunition will bring you to your knees, Alex Murphy in a warehouse with no backup style. You have to jump from rooftop to rooftop and scale pole after pole after pole after pole after pole through every kind of attack with minimal lives before getting to your reward, which is a boss at the end of almost every single level who will not die. But I gotta tell you, the juice is worth the squeeze with this one. Not only does Robo look great and move fantastically for a 1993 side-scroller, but the ambience is unmatched. Just feeling like you were in the world of Terminator while playing as Robocop is a blast, even when the two aren't on screen together. The worlds mesh together so seamlessly that a 90s sci-fi action kid was in heaven the entire time, even as you were left wanting to strangle yourself with one of those damn tangled controller cords after dying for a dumbass reason for the 15th time in a row. The music was different in both main versions of the game, but it was killer in both. Over on the Sega side of things, you get an electronic bop that every once in a while would just say Terminator in a sexy voice for some reason. Though the SNES music was less edgy, it was still kick-ass and pretty catchy. The main difference between the two games was the presentation of the plot and the violence levels. While over on the Super Nintendo, you spend a little more time shooting less adult threats like rolling barrels for some reason. In the Genesis side, you would have your villains exploding into pools of blood, which was pretty gnarly for a 90s video game pre-Mortal Kombat. But while the Genesis version ends with a quick, "Congratulations, you saved the human race and we hope you had fun," the Super Nintendo version definitely takes the cake here. After defeating the multicolored, almost holographic Skynet CPU core kind of looking like a Terminator version of an evil Zordon from the Power Rangers, the story isn't over. The self-destruct sequence instead initiates, and you're left to escape the final level the way you came before it detonates in 125 seconds. This was sure to piss us off and leave us with sweaty palms, but it's a cool wrinkle in the game. It would have taken it over the top if you could have heard the Predator's suicidal laugh in the background as you escaped, but we're asking for too much, I fear. You then drive away in your Star Fox 64 looking machine as Skynet explodes in your rear view, and Robocop walks off into the sunset with the promise that he will build a new world from the ashes of the old one. But not before picking up this Terminator head and celebrating Little Mac's Super Punch-Out style. While the reviews for Robocop vs. Terminator skew mid to lower high range, there was no doubt it became a staple in many a 90s kids' memories. The gameplay could be difficult and frustrating, but also rewarding. Would the game have been a success or nearly as fun if it weren't for the titular characters and all the coolness they brought with them? Absolutely not. But they did, and these were two franchises that happen to go together like peanut butter and jelly, or Ecto Cooler and Bagel Bites. Hell, we may need to do a 90s snack video at some point, so make sure you're subscribed. But either way, if you have any memories of playing these games, please share them in the comments down below. Until next time,
hasta la vista, baby.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. Joe Blow was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.